He chose to save his ex from drowning, abandoning me and our kids until a billionaire stepped in the storm came without warning that August afternoon. Not the kind with thunder and lightning, but the kind that tears through a family and leaves nothing but wreckage behind. I stood on the crowded beach, my 5-year-old daughter Emma clutching my left hand while my 3-year-old son Noah held my right. The sun blazed overhead, families laughed around us, children built sandcastles, and somewhere in that perfect summer scene, my husband Marcus was about to destroy everything we had built together. I remember thinking how beautiful the day was, how lucky we were to have this vacation after months of his long work hours and my exhaustion from managing our home alone. Little did I know that in less than an hour, Marcus would speak words that would echo in my mind forever. Why should I waste my life on you and those useless kids when I can have the woman I truly love? Those words didn't just break my heart. They shattered my entire understanding of who I thought my husband was. This is my story of how one moment of betrayal led to the most unexpected salvation, and how sometimes the person who breaks you becomes the very reason you learn to soar. The morning had started like any other vacation day. Marcus had actually smiled at breakfast, something he hadn't done in weeks. He even helped Noah with his cereal, wiping the milk that dribbled down our son's chin with a gentleness I hadn't seen lately. Emma showed him the seashells she had collected the day before, carefully arranged on the kitchen counter of our rented beach house. Each one had a name and a story. Marcus listened, or at least pretended to, nodding at the right moments while scrolling through his phone. I should have noticed the way his fingers kept returning to one particular message thread, the way his eyes lit up at whatever he was reading. But I was too busy packing our beach bag with sunscreen, snacks, water bottles, and the 1,000 other things you need when you have young children. I was too busy being grateful that we were together as a family, even if Marcus seemed distant lately. The beach was only a 5-minute walk from our rental, and Emma skipped ahead while Noah rode on Marcus's shoulders. Other families smiled at us as we passed. We must have looked like the perfect family from the outside. The handsome father, the devoted mother, 2 adorable children heading for a day of fun in the sun. If only they knew how many nights I had fallen asleep alone while Marcus worked late, how many times I had made excuses for his absence at school events, how often I had to be both mother and father to our children. We found a spot near the water, but not too close, spreading our large blue blanket on the warm sand. Emma immediately started digging with her plastic shovel while Noah chased seagulls, his little legs pumping as hard as they could while the birds easily stayed just out of reach. Marcus sat on the blanket, already back on his phone. I wanted to ask him to put it away, to be present with us, but I had learned that such requests only led to arguments about how hard he worked to provide for us. So I built sandcastles with Emma instead, helped Noah collect shells, and tried to ignore the growing distance between Marcus and me. Around noon, the beach became more crowded. A group of young people set up volleyball nearby, their music floating over to us. An elderly couple walked hand in hand along the water's edge, and I wondered if Marcus and I would ever reach that stage, still holding hands after decades together. Then I heard the scream. It cut through all the beach noise like a knife, high and desperate. Everyone turned toward the water where a woman was pointing frantically at the ocean. At first, I couldn't see what was wrong. The waves were moderate, plenty of swimmers were in the water, but then I saw her. A woman, maybe 30 yards out, her arms flailing, her head disappearing under the water and coming back up with increasing desperation. Marcus moved before anyone else. He shoved his phone into my hands without a word and ran toward the water. His shirt came off as he ran, thrown aside on the sand. I had forgotten how strong a swimmer he was, how he had been on his college swim team, how he used to brag about his summer job as a lifeguard. He dove under a wave and emerged already halfway to the struggling woman. Other people were running now too, some calling 911, others gathering at the water's edge. I pulled Emma and Noah close to me, trying to shield them from the scary scene while also unable to look away myself. Marcus reached the woman just as she went under again. He dove down and came up with his arm around her chest, turning her onto her back like he had been trained to do years ago. She was coughing and sputtering, but she was alive. He swam strongly back to shore, keeping her head above water, talking to her the whole time, though we couldn't hear what he was saying, When they reached shallow water, 2 other men helped Marcus carry her onto the beach. Someone had already called for paramedics, and I could hear sirens in the distance. The woman was conscious, crying and coughing up seawater, but clearly going to be okay thanks to Marcus's quick action. That's when I saw her face clearly for the first time, and my blood turned to ice in my veins. Victoria Chen, Marcus's ex-girlfriend from college, the one he had dated for 3 years before meeting me, the one his mother still mentioned sometimes with a wistful tone, the one whose picture I had found hidden in his desk drawer just last month when I was looking for stamps. She was still beautiful even while gasping for air on the sand, her long black hair plastered to her face, her designer swimsuit clinging to her perfect figure. Marcus knelt beside her, brushing her hair back from her face with a tenderness that made my stomach churn. Victoria grabbed his hand like it was a lifeline, her eyes locked on his face. Even from where I stood, 20 feet away with our children, I could see something pass between them. A spark, a recognition, a renewal of something I had hoped was long dead. "Marcus," she whispered loud enough for those nearby to hear. "You saved me. Of course it had to be you." The crowd was already dispersing, the drama over, but I stood frozen as the paramedics arrived. They checked Victoria's vital signs, wrapped her in a blanket, offered oxygen that she declined. She insisted she was fine, just shaken, didn't need to go to the hospital. The whole time she never let go of Marcus's hand. Emma tugged on my shorts. "Mommy, why is Daddy holding that lady's hand?" I couldn't answer. My throat had closed up entirely. Noah was building a sand pile at my feet, oblivious to the fact that our family was falling apart in real time. Marcus finally looked over at us, and for just a moment I saw guilt flash across his face. But it was quickly replaced by something else, something that looked dangerously close to excitement. He said something to Victoria, then stood and walked over to us. Sand stuck to his wet skin, and water dripped from his swim trunks, but all I could see was the light in his eyes that hadn't been there in months. "That was Victoria," he said as if I hadn't recognized her. "From college. What are the chances?" His voice had a breathless quality, like a teenager who just talked to his crush. I found my voice somehow. "Pretty small, I'd imagine. Is she okay?" He nodded, glancing back at where Victoria still sat with the paramedics. "She's shaken up. She said she's staying at the Ocean View Resort, alone. She just went through a divorce." The way he said alone and divorce made my skin crawl. "You did a good thing," I managed to say, because what else could I say? My husband had just saved someone's life. How could I be upset about that? But I was. I was furious and terrified and heartbroken all at once because I knew, with absolute certainty, that this was the beginning of the end. The rest of our beach day was ruined. Marcus kept checking his phone, which now had Victoria's number in it. She had insisted on having it to thank him properly later. Emma and Noah could sense the tension and became cranky, fighting over toys and whining about everything. We packed up early and went back to the rental house where Marcus immediately went to shower. I heard him on the phone in the bathroom, his voice low and warm, punctuated by occasional laughter. That night, he announced he was going to check on Victoria, just to make sure she was really okay. "It's the responsible thing to do," he said, already putting on his good cologne, the one I had bought him for his birthday that he never wore for me. I wanted to scream, to beg, to demand he stay with his family. Instead, I just nodded and started making dinner for the kids. He came back after midnight, slipping into bed reeking of perfume and wine. When I asked how Victoria was, he murmured that she was still shaken up and needed a friend. A friend. That's what he called it as he began spending every evening with her for the rest of our vacation. Our children barely saw their father for 5 days straight. He missed Emma's first successful swim without floaties. He missed Noah's excitement at finding a whole sand dollar. He missed bedtime stories and morning pancakes and all the small moments that make a family. On our last night at the beach, I finally confronted him. The kids were asleep, and he was getting ready to leave again. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, blocking his path. "You're going to see her again?" I asked, though it wasn't really a question. Marcus's face hardened. "Don't start, Sarah. You don't understand what she's been through." "What about what we're going through?" I gestured toward the kids' room. "Emma asked me today if Daddy doesn't love us anymore. What am I supposed to tell her? That's when he said it, the words that would haunt me forever, that would replay in my mind during countless sleepless nights, that would fundamentally change who I was as a person. Marcus looked me straight in the eye, his face twisted with contempt, and said, "Why should I waste my life on you and those useless kids when I can have the woman I truly love?" The words hung in the air between us like poison. I actually staggered backward, my hand finding the wall for support. Useless kids. Waste my life. The woman I truly love. Each phrase was a dagger, precisely aimed at everything I held dear. "You don't mean that," I whispered, but his expression told me he did. He had already chosen. The drowning had just been an excuse, a catalyst for something that had probably been brewing since he found out Victoria was divorced. He pushed past me without another word and left. I stood there in the doorway for I don't know how long, unable to move, unable to cry, unable to process what had just happened. Then Noah called out from his room, having a bad dream, and I went to him because that's what mothers do. We function even when we're shattered inside. The next morning, Marcus was gone. Not just gone for the morning, but gone completely. His suitcase, his clothes, his toiletries, everything vanished as if he had never been there at all. He had left in the middle of the night without even saying goodbye to Emma and Noah. I found a note on the kitchen counter, just 3 lines. "I'm staying with Victoria. We'll discuss arrangements when you get home. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." That was it. 7 years of marriage, 2 beautiful children, countless shared dreams, reduced to 3 cold lines on a piece of paper. I stood in that rental kitchen, the sound of the ocean mocking me through the windows, and felt my entire world collapse. But I couldn't collapse, not with 2 children depending on me. So I did what I had to do. I packed our things, loaded the car, and drove home alone with Emma and Noah. When Emma asked where Daddy was, I told her he had to leave early for work. The lie tasted like ash in my mouth, but the truth would have destroyed her. The weeks that followed were the darkest of my life. Marcus had drained our joint checking account, taking almost everything. He had canceled my credit cards, the ones linked to his accounts. He had even told his parents, who had always loved me, that I had been neglecting him and the children, that Victoria had helped him see how toxic I was. The lies spread through our social circle like wildfire. Some friends believed him and stopped calling. Others reached out, but I was too humiliated to respond. I had gone from a comfortable middle-class life to wondering how I would pay for groceries. My part-time job at the library, which I had kept more for personal fulfillment than financial need, now became our lifeline. But it wasn't enough. The mortgage payments, the car payment, the basic bills, everything was overwhelming. I applied for food stamps, something I never imagined I would need to do. I sold my jewelry, except for my wedding ring, which I couldn't bring myself to part with yet. I moved us from our 4-bedroom house to a tiny 2-bedroom apartment where the walls were thin and the neighbors loud. Emma struggled in her new school. She had always been confident and outgoing, but now she was withdrawn and anxious. She wet the bed for the first time in 2 years. Noah, too young to fully understand, kept asking when Daddy would come home. Every night, I held them as they cried, promising things would get better while having no idea how that could possibly be true. Marcus, meanwhile, was living his best life with Victoria. They posted pictures on social media of romantic dinners, weekend getaways, shopping sprees. In one photo, Victoria wore a necklace I recognized, one Marcus had said we couldn't afford when I had admired it months ago. They looked radiant, in love, unburdened by the family Marcus had thrown away like garbage. His child support payments were sporadic at best. He had hired an expensive lawyer who argued that since Victoria had significant assets, Marcus's financial obligations to his children should be reduced. The family court system moved slowly, and in the meantime, we struggled to survive. I lost 20 pounds I couldn't afford to lose. My hair started falling out from stress. I developed insomnia, lying awake at night wondering how I had been so blind, how I had missed the signs, how the man I had loved could have become this cruel stranger. Friends who still talked to me said I should be angry, but I was too exhausted for anger. I was in survival mode, putting one foot in front of the other, getting through each day for my children. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Thursday in October, 3 months after the beach incident. I was working a catering gig I had picked up for extra money, serving appetizers at a charity gala for children's literacy. The pay was minimal, but every dollar counted. I wore the same black dress I had worn to every formal event for the past 5 years, hoping no one would notice the hem was coming undone or that the fabric had pills from too many washes. The ballroom was magnificent, all crystal chandeliers and gold accents. The guests were the kind of wealthy where they didn't even notice the help, which suited me fine. I was invisible, moving through the crowd with my tray of champagne, grateful for the anonymity. That's when I saw him. He wasn't particularly tall or immediately striking, but something about him made me pause. He was standing alone near a display about childhood literacy rates, actually reading the information instead of just socializing like everyone else. His suit was expensive but understated, his salt and pepper hair neatly trimmed. When he turned and our eyes met, I quickly looked away and moved to another part of the room. But I felt his gaze follow me. Later, as I was refilling my tray in the service area, he approached. "Excuse me," he said, his voice gentle. "I don't mean to bother you, but I noticed you've been watching the presentations, not just serving. Are you interested in childhood literacy?" I was so startled that someone had actually seen me as a person that I almost dropped my tray. Yes, I used to volunteer with reading programs before. I trailed off, not wanting to explain before my life fell apart. He smiled, and it was genuine, reaching his eyes. "I'm James Harrison. I run the Harrison Foundation. We're always looking for people who have a real passion for education, not just people who show up for the photo opportunities." I laughed, surprising myself. It had been months since I had laughed. "Well, I can guarantee I'm not here for photo opportunities. I'm here for the hourly wage." Most wealthy people would have been uncomfortable with such directness, but James just nodded. "Honest work is admirable. But I have a feeling you're capable of much more. What's your background?" Something about his sincerity made me open up. I told him about my degree in education, about the teaching job I had given up when Emma was born because Marcus said his career was more important, about the literacy programs I had volunteered with until recently. I didn't tell him about Marcus leaving or our current situation, but somehow I think he sensed there was more to my story. He handed me a business card. "I'm looking for someone to head up a new initiative, bringing books and reading programs to underfunded schools. The pay is significant, and the hours would work around school schedules. If you're interested, call my office tomorrow." I stared at the card like it was made of gold. A real job, with real pay, doing something meaningful. It seemed too good to be true. "Why would you offer this to someone you just met?" I asked. James looked at me thoughtfully. "Because I've built my success on being able to read people. And I see someone who's fighting hard to stay afloat but hasn't given up. Those are the people who change the world when given the chance." Before I could respond, my supervisor called me back to work. James nodded and walked away, leaving me holding his card and a spark of hope I hadn't felt in months. I called the next day, my hands shaking as I dialed. James's assistant put me straight through to him, and we talked for an hour about education, about the gap between privileged and underprivileged children, about how literacy could change lives. By the end of the call, I had an interview scheduled for Monday. I spent the weekend preparing, researching the foundation, practicing answers to potential questions. Emma helped me pick out my outfit, insisting I wear the blue blouse that brought out my eyes. Noah contributed by drawing me a good luck picture of a rainbow. The interview was in James's office, a spacious but surprisingly warm room filled with books and children's artwork from programs the foundation supported. We talked for 2 hours, and it felt less like an interview and more like a conversation between colleagues. He offered me the job on the spot, with a salary that was more than Marcus and I had made combined. I actually cried right there in his office. Professional? No, but I couldn't help it. This job meant I could keep my kids in a good school district, could afford groceries without counting every penny, could maybe even save something for their futures. James handed me a tissue without judgment. "When can you start?" he asked gently. "Tomorrow," I said immediately, then blushed at my eagerness. He laughed. "Monday is fine. Take the weekend to celebrate with your children." As I was leaving, he said something that stayed with me. "Sarah, I know there's more to your story than you've shared, and that's okay. But I want you to know that whatever you've been through, it doesn't define your worth. Your character does, and yours is evident." Starting that job was like coming back to life. I had a purpose beyond mere survival. I was good at something, valued for my ideas and contributions. The team was supportive and collaborative. James was a mentor, never crossing professional boundaries but always available for guidance. The programs we developed began showing real results in test scores and engagement. Local media picked up our story. I was interviewed for newspapers and even a morning show segment about innovative literacy programs. Marcus saw that segment. I know because Victoria called me that afternoon, the first time I had heard from her directly. "You think you're something special now?" she said, her voice sharp with jealousy. "Marcus says that job is probably charity, that James Harrison probably just feels sorry for you." I could have been angry. I could have argued. Instead, I said simply, "I'm sorry you feel the need to call me, Victoria. It must be difficult, living with someone who abandoned his children. I hope you never have kids with him, because when someone newer and shinier comes along, he'll abandon them too." She hung up on me, but I didn't care. I was finding my strength again. Over the next several months, life steadily improved. Emma's anxiety decreased as our stability increased. Noah stopped asking about Daddy as often. We moved to a better apartment, one with a small yard where the kids could play. I even started sleeping through the night again. James and I developed a friendship built on mutual respect and shared goals. He never pushed for more, though sometimes I caught him looking at me with something deeper than professional interest. But he was patient, understanding that I was still healing, still rebuilding. Then Marcus reappeared. He showed up at Emma's school concert, the first school event he had attended since leaving us. He sat in the back, but Emma saw him and forgot her lines in the song, staring at him with a mixture of hope and confusion. After the concert, he approached us in the parking lot. He looked terrible. His clothes were wrinkled, he had lost weight, and there were dark circles under his eyes. "Sarah," he said, ignoring the way I stepped protectively in front of the children. "We need to talk." I wanted to say no to walk away, but Emma was watching with huge eyes. "Emma, Noah, go play on the playground for a few minutes," I said. They reluctantly went, though Emma kept looking back. "What do you want, Marcus?" He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I once found endearing. Victoria left me. She found someone with more money, someone more exciting. She said I was boring, that I had given up everything interesting about myself for her. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. "And you're telling me this why?" "I made a mistake, Sarah, a huge mistake. I want to come home. I want my family back." He reached for my hand, but I stepped back. "Those useless kids?" I said quietly. "The life you were wasting? That family?" His face crumpled. I didn't mean it. I was crazy, intoxicated by her, by the attention. I threw away everything that mattered for an illusion. I looked at this man I had once loved so deeply I thought I would die without him. Now I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just a hollow echo of what used to be. "Marcus, you didn't just leave. You destroyed us financially. You spread lies about me. You abandoned your children without a backward glance. You chose her over us every single day for months. That's not a mistake. That's a choice, repeated over and over until it became who you are." "People can change," he pleaded. "I've changed." "Maybe," I said. "But I've changed too. I'm not the woman who needed you to feel complete. I'm not the woman who would accept crumbs of attention and call it love. I'm definitely not the woman who would let you back into our lives to hurt us again." "You're seeing someone," he said accusingly. "That rich guy, Harrison?" "James is my boss and my friend," I said calmly. "But even if he were more, that's none of your concern anymore. You gave up the right to have opinions about my life when you walked out on us." Emma and Noah were coming back, and I could see Emma's hope that maybe Daddy was coming home. It broke my heart all over again. "You can see the children according to the court schedule, if you can manage to show up," I told him. "But we are over, Marcus. Forever." He tried to argue, but I gathered my children and left. Emma cried in the car, asking why Daddy couldn't come home. I explained as gently as I could that sometimes adults make choices that can't be undone, but that both Mommy and Daddy loved her and Noah very much. It wasn't entirely true. I wasn't sure Marcus was capable of real love, but my children didn't need to know that yet. That night James called. He had a way of knowing when I needed support. We talked for hours about second chances, about forgiveness, about knowing your worth. "You did the right thing," he said. "Protecting yourself and your children isn't selfish. It's necessary." A year passed. Marcus faded in and out of the children's lives, showing up when it was convenient for him, making promises he didn't keep. Each disappointment hurt them less as they learned not to expect much from him. It was sad, but it was also reality. Meanwhile, James and I grew closer. It started with coffee after work to discuss programs, then dinner to celebrate successful initiatives. He met Emma and Noah at a foundation family picnic and won them over by actually listening to their stories and remembering their interests. He never tried to replace Marcus, never pushed for a role in their lives. He was just there, steady and reliable, everything Marcus had never been. The first time he told me he loved me, we were at another charity gala. But this time, I was there as the director of childhood literacy programs, not as catering staff. I wore a new dress, one I had bought with my own money, earned from my own success. We were dancing, and he pulled me close and whispered, "I love you, Sarah. I love your strength, your compassion, your dedication to your children. I love the way you've rebuilt your life without becoming bitter. I love all of you." I wanted to say it back, but the words stuck in my throat. The last man I had said those words to had nearly destroyed me. James saw my struggle and smiled softly. "You don't have to say it back. I just wanted you to know. I'm not going anywhere." 6 months later, I finally said it. We were at the beach, the same beach where my old life had ended. But this time, I was there with James and the kids, building sandcastles and collecting shells. Emma was teaching James to bodyboard while Noah built an elaborate moat system around his castle. I watched them, my heart so full it might burst, and realized that this was what real love looked like. Not dramatic rescues and rekindled flames, but showing up every day, building something together, choosing each other over and over. "James," I said as he came back, shaking water from his hair like a happy dog. "I love you." His face lit up like the sun. "Yeah?" "Yeah," I said, laughing as he picked me up and spun me around while the kids giggled. We married the following spring in a small ceremony with just family and close friends. Emma was my maid of honor. Noah was the ring bearer. James's vows made me cry when he promised to love not just me, but Emma and Noah, to be the steady presence in their lives, to earn their trust and respect every day. Marcus didn't come, though we had sent him an invitation for the children's sake. He was living with another woman by then, someone younger who didn't know his history. Victoria had married a tech billionaire and moved to Singapore. Sometimes I wondered if she ever thought about the family she had helped destroy, but mostly I didn't think about her at all, because I was too busy living my life, my real life, not the shadow existence I had accepted for so long. The Foundation's programs expanded nationally. I was invited to speak at conferences, to testify before Congress about education funding. Emma excelled in school, her confidence fully restored. Noah became fascinated with marine biology, and James supported his interest with books and museum trips and endless patience for questions about octopi. 5 years after that day on the beach when Marcus chose to save Victoria and abandon us, I received a call that Marcus had been in an accident. He was in the hospital, and apparently I was still his emergency contact. I went, not out of obligation, but for closure. He looked small in the hospital bed, older than his years. The woman he had been living with had already left, unable to handle the stress of his recovery. "Sarah," he said when he saw me, "thank you for coming." "I came for Emma and Noah," I said honestly. "They deserve to know their father's okay, even if you haven't been much of a father to them." He winced but nodded. "I destroyed everything good in my life," he said quietly. "You and the kids, you were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I threw it away for nothing." "Not for nothing," I corrected. "You threw it away for what you thought you wanted." And in doing so, you set me free to find what I actually deserved. I told him about the kids' accomplishments, showed him recent photos. He cried, seeing how much he had missed, how happy they looked with James. "He's a good man," Marcus said. "Better than I ever was." "Yes," I agreed simply. "He is." Before I left, Marcus said, "That day on the beach, when I saved Victoria, I felt like a hero. But I wasn't, was I? A real hero would have saved his family instead of destroying it." I looked at him with something approaching pity. "No, Marcus, you were never a hero. You were just a man who made a choice. And you chose wrong." Walking out of that hospital, I felt the last chains of my past fall away. Marcus's betrayal had once seemed like the end of everything, but it had actually been the beginning. Without his cruelty, I never would have found my own strength. Without his abandonment, I never would have met James. Without him choosing Victoria, I never would have chosen myself. That night at dinner, as James helped Noah with his homework and Emma told us about her day, I realized that Marcus had been right about one thing. Why should he have wasted his life on us? We were so much better without him. We were a real family now, built on love and respect and showing up every single day. James caught my eye across the table and winked, and I smiled back, grateful for the storm that had shipwrecked my old life and delivered me to this new shore. The title of my story remains the same. He chose to save his ex from drowning, abandoning me and our kids until a billionaire stepped in. But the ending isn't about being saved by James or his money. It's about saving myself, about discovering that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the catalyst for the best thing. Marcus chose Victoria that day on the beach, chose to save her while letting his family drown. But in the end, we were the ones who learned to swim. And now, years later, when I stand on that same beach with my real family, watching my children play in the waves while James holds my hand, I thank Marcus silently for his betrayal. Because without it, I never would have known how strong I could be, how much love I deserved, how beautiful life could be when you stop accepting less than your worth. The woman he saved that day went on to leave him too, chasing the next shiny thing. But the family he abandoned? We went on to thrive, to bloom, to become everything we were meant to be. And that, I realize now, is the ultimate revenge and the greatest gift. Not because we wanted to prove him wrong, but because we finally proved to ourselves that we were worth so much more than he ever believed.